All right, so in this video, I just want to talk a little bit about graphing factored form quadratics. We've been working on it a little bit, but I think some people need a little more practice on it. And so what I'm going to do is I'll type in an equation, and before it graphs, I'll turn it off so we can try to predict what it'll look like before we actually see the whole graph. So I'm going to type in something in factored form like x minus 2 times x minus 4. Anytime you are given a quadratic equation, the different points that you're going to want to try to figure out are the x-intercepts, the y-intercepts, and the vertex. And with factored form, you can find all of those fairly easily. When we do a standard form video, it can get a little trickier, but in a factored form video, you can find all of them pretty easily. Now keep in mind, x-intercept means plug in x and you get y equals 0. The crucial thing is that the x-intercept is not necessarily a number that you see in the equation. It is a number that you plug into the equation that will result in a y value of 0. Okay, so just because you see a number in the equation doesn't mean that's the x-intercept. The x-intercept is what did you plug in that made the whole equation give a y value of 0. Y-intercept means plug in x equals 0. And vertex is halfway between the x-intercepts. Okay, so let's use those ideas. If I'm looking at y equals x minus 2 times x minus 4, I can tell from looking at each of those parentheses that if I plug in x equals 2, I'll get 2 minus 2, which is 0. 0 times anything is 0, so if I plug in x equals 2, that'll give me a y value of 0, and if I plug in x equals 4, that'll give me a y value of 0. Many of my students tell me, oh, you just flip it around. That's okay, you can say you just flip it around, but the important thing is that I plug in a number that gives me a y value of 0. I'll show you why I'm making such a stink out of that with another example in a second. So those are my x-intercepts. The y-intercept means I plug in 0 for x, and I calculate what 0 minus 2 times 0 minus 4 is. Well, that's just negative 2 times negative 4. Negative 2 times negative 4. That's a weird looking 4. That's fine. And that's just going to equal 8. So the y-intercept is 8, so the y-intercept is going to be right up there. And the vertex is halfway between the x-intercepts. So halfway between 2 and 4 would mean x is equal to 3. So the x value of the vertex is 3. The y value, you get a y value by plugging in x. That's the whole thing that an equation is good for. An equation tells you how do you figure out the y value. 3 minus 2 is 1. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. So we should see a vertex right here at the point of 3 comma negative 1. Let's turn on our graph. We'll see a beautiful factored form hitting exactly through those points. Okay, I'm going to do a slightly more complicated example, and you'll see how I did the exact same steps that I just did now. Plug in an x to get a y equals 0, that's an x-intercept. Plug in x equals 0, that's a y-intercept. Halfway between, that's a vertex. All right, so let's turn this off. Let's make it harder. Let's do like 16 minus, or let's go like 1 minus 16x times x plus 2. Okay? One of those is easy for me to determine the x-intercept. I know right here that x is equal to negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. 0 times that other ugly parenthesis is 0. It doesn't matter what the other parenthesis is. If one of them is 0, times anything else will make a y value of 0. But it's hard for me to just look at this other one and figure out what makes it equal 0. So let's figure it out. You know how to solve this equation. 1 minus 16x equals 0. You can subtract 1 from both sides, or you can add 16x to both sides. Both work the same. So you get 1 equals 16x. You can divide both sides by 16, and you get 1/16 is x. So I know when I get around to graphing this, one of my x-intercepts is going to be right there at 2. The other x-intercept is going to be like right here at 1/16. How do I find the y-intercept? I plug in 0 for x. So 1 minus 16 times 0, 0 plus 2. 16 times 0 is 0, so I have 1 minus 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. So I know I'm going to have a y-intercept right there at 2. And the last one, the vertex, this is the hardest one. I got to go halfway between -2 and 1/16. -2 plus 1/16. Oh man, my pen's, okay, that's fine. -2 plus 1/16. Well, let's make them into a common denominator. This is my secret plan to make you learn fractions. -2 is the same as 32 over 16. So that's -31 over 16. But I got to go halfway in between, so I have to divide it by 2. That's how you find halfway in between. Add your two numbers up, divide it by 2. If you divide 16ths by 2, you get 30 seconds. -31 over 32. That's just the x value of my vertex. I plug it in to get the y value of my vertex. 1 minus 16 times the number I just got. And then the number I just got, x, -31 over 32, plus 2. Okay. 16 goes into 32 twice, so I just have a 2 on the bottom. But at this point I just feel like doing a calculator. I don't need to prove that I can do fractions. So I'm just going to type in okay, please look at how I type that in, everybody. I just put -31 over 32 where x was. Type the rest of the equation in. And that tells me my y value is 17.016, etc. So I'll need to zoom out a little bit for that. So let's make sure we move our dots to where they should be. Because when I zoomed out, it moved stuff around a little bit on me. Okay, so -2 is now right here. 1/16 is right there. +2 is right there. And then the 17 is going to be right up about there. So let's see if we did it. Okay? So, regardless of how hard the numbers are, example number 1 was pretty easy numbers. Example number 2 was pretty hard numbers. You can do the same thing, and when the numbers get hard, grab your calculator and do it. I just did it. I didn't really feel like trying to calculate 17.016 by hand. I just grabbed a calculator. The concept is important. Find the x-intercept by thinking, what makes y equal 0? Find the y-intercept by plugging in 0 for x. Find the vertex by going halfway in between. Alright, thank you for watching. Please let me know if you have questions.